Thank you so much for joining us today. Really appreciate you participating in our workshop on the CSS Financial Aid Profile. It will be brought to you by Diana Matier and Jazz Hernandez, and then myself, Christopher Seidel. So if you aren't familiar with College Depot is a free college access center located in Burton Bar Central Library, which is a library within the library department for the city of Phoenix. We're located on Central Avenue and just south of McDowell. Of course, for the time, our branch, the libraries are closed physically, but we are fully operational virtually. Some other services that we provide in addition to virtual workshops are one-on-one appointments. So if you need assistance with any phase of any phase of college access, whether it's general college planning, financial aid, or admissions, we have an amazing team of advisors who are able to assist you one-on-one and virtually. So I'll go ahead and post a link in the chat here in a second on that you can fill out if you'd like to get, like as you're going through, you're gonna learn a lot of information about the CSS profile. Some of our advisors are able to help with that in addition to other things that you may learn about or already know about, but just need assistance with. So you can click the link and then request an appointment. One of our team members will reach out to you to find a day and a time that works for you. And then you would meet virtually via Teams with that advisor to get help with whatever it is you need assistance with. So I'll go ahead and turn it over to Diana and Jazz. If you have questions, comments, or would like further clarification, go ahead and post them in the chat. And at some point, if either of the presenters, Jazz or Diana, they may ask you to just unmute yourself and go ahead and voice your questions or responses. But otherwise, the chat is your friend. I'll be in the background monitoring the chat so I can chime in as needed if there are anything posted in there as we go along. Okay. Great. Well, I'll thank you so much, and I'll just go ahead and hand it over.
Okay. Thank you, Chris. I am Diana Matier. I am the financial aid manager and an advisor at College Depot. And I'm very pleased that we have a student presenting today. A student who's been working with the College Depot as an intern and also taking advantage of our services. I'm very, very pleased to introduce you to Jazz Hernandez, who is a high school senior at Bioscience. Jazz has recently completed the CSS Financial Aid Profile for herself, and as we've talked about it, we have been talking about how important it is for all students to have an understanding of it and to get it completed as accurately as possible, because it does dictate a lot of institutional money from select private institutions out of the state of Arizona. So Jennifer, I'm assuming that you are in the process of completing it. This is a very small session. We had several people attending, but unfortunately they are not able to be with us, at least at the beginning of the session, but we're going to go ahead and present it. But we want you to feel, any students on the line, that you can have individualized attention and answers to your questions if you have them. So without further ado, I am so pleased to introduce one of the most outstanding young college advisors in the state of Arizona, and that's Miss Jazz Hernandez. Take it away, Jazz.
Right, well, I guess we could begin with the walkthrough. I know it's like I didn't know about the CSS profile, like even starting this school year or even during the summer, so I just barely found out about it through my counselor. And when I realized how much money it could earn you, especially like through private institutions who meet 100% of your financial need, kind of found out how important it is. And if others don't know about it, then I'm hoping to share the information. All right, let's get right into it. What you want to do is search up on your web browser is CSS Profile College Board, and you're probably going to click the first link because it'll take you to it. So I'm going to give you some time, Jennifer. If you don't already have it pulled up, please let me know when you do. And I can't see the chat either, so.
Yeah, Chris will monitor it because I can't see it either. And Jazz and Chris And Jennifer and Christina, I'm going to step away for a moment where I have a staff call from another staff member, but I don't think you need me right at this point, so I'll be right back. I'm popular today.
All right. Yeah, sounds good. And yeah, Jazz, I will. I'll chime in if there's anything in the chat.
All right. Yeah. So when we do access like the link to the CSS profile, you're going to want to click like either create or sign into your 2021 to 2022 CSS profile. Do not click the 2020 to 2021 because that is for college freshmen who are in college right now. Since we're like high school seniors, we want to be in the 2021 to 2022. When you begin it, this is what you're going to see. Hopefully it's pretty general information. You're going to fill in your first name and your last name, your email address, your phone number, date of birth, and your marital status. I'm assuming that we're probably going to click, single. And yeah, right now you won't have an ID for it, so don't worry about that. And as for your citizenship, if you do click you're a resident, you might have to be put in your social security. And I'll wait for like a minute just so you could get set up, and by 3:42 we'll move on to the next section. Or you could let me know when you're ready. Just, walking through this is going to be a process for you guys.
So I don't put anything for the ID, right?
No, you don't. Don't worry. And I'll explain later as to why it includes it right now, but it's not like, since you don't have a CSS profile at the moment, you don't need it.
I filled out the first part you're showing right now. Do I
Okay.
complete the whole thing or?
Yeah, we'll move on to the next thing. So student status, we have this, and most likely you'll probably answer no to these questions, and they're just going to determine if you're an independent or dependent student. So once you complete these answers, we can move on to housing information. And also, go
Sorry,
ahead.
Jess. But just a heads up, we just had two more students join.
Oh, all right.
Yeah, Anastasia and Jasmine Hernandez.
Okay. Guess we got another Jasmine. Anyways.
Yeah. Or Yasmin. Sorry. With YASMIN.
Okay. Another thing I do want you guys to note that there's these little yellow boxes on the side of that. If you do have any questions regarding the answer that they're asking you, they might include that yellow checkbox, and you could read for additional information on there. So it's really useful to read it, but we'll probably won't need it for these first sections. And as for the other two students, they know where to go for the first part, like how to access the CSS profile.
I do not.
Okay, so I'm going to retrace a little bit, just a little back. So first thing you want to do is search up CSS Profile College Board, and you're probably going to click the first link. When you do that, you're going to get prompted with a screen that says sign into your 2021 to 2022 profile, and there's going to be like another button that says 2020 and 2021. Do not click that one. You want to make sure you get started on the 2021 to 2022. You're going to see this screen automatically as soon as you log in, and that's when you're going to get started.
Okay.
And then Jess, it looks like we have a question from Jennifer. What does emancipated minor mean?
Emancipated minor, so it means that you're the court has determined that you are independent. So it says right there, so an emancipated minor is that you're independent on your own by the court. So you live on your own. You don't assigned to a legal guardian. And hopefully that's correct. If Diana's here, she could probably.
What I call it, Jennifer, is being divorced from your parents. But as Jazz said, it is a court-ordered emancipation, so you are no longer under their control or their support. Very likely you are not an emancipated minor. The questions on independence are pretty much exactly the same, are they not, Jazz, as on the FAFSA? So Jennifer, if you've done the FAFSA, these are the same nature of questions.
All right, are we ready to move on to the next section, which is housing information? All right, and we'll be moving.
Aha, we have someone else joining.
All right, so now we're halfway done with getting started, and this is where you're going to put in your address. And the next sections, which is confirm demographics, it's just going to confirm your information that you put in, like right now, and your parents' information. So I'll let you guys get done with that in like a minute, just because it doesn't take long. Don't worry. And you're going to see, like, right as we pass this section, the whole little drop down menu is going to grow by a lot. So don't get overwhelmed by it. We're going to get through it.
Yes, one of the interesting things about the CSS profile is the information keeps growing as you answer questions. Keeps asking you more and more and more. When you all get to the parents section, if you have a single parent because of a divorce, separation, or other absence of your other biological or natural parent from the household, please let us know and we will assist you further. Typically, you're reporting on the parent that you live with and have lived with the most in the last 12 months. But if you answer that your parent is single, there will be additional questions about your non-custodial parent.
Right. And I will move on. If anyone has any protests, just let me know before I do. We're all good?
Yeah, we're done protesting, Jess.
All right.
So, yeah, it looks like there's no questions, so you're going to move forward.
Okay, now we're at the reticence sections. Look at how much that has expanded down there. Don't worry. Okay, so this residence section is after, like, what you're going to see after filing out your parents' information. You're just going to put in the country where your parents live. So at the current moment. So if they're living in the States, put down that they're living in the States. If they're living in another country, put that down. And just for additional information, make sure to click Save and Continue as you move on to the CSS profile. I know you could click on the side for like moving through, but you do want to click Save and Continue. All right, so move on. Now we're at the academic section, and this section will ask about like yourself. So if you're at this screen, please let me know when you're here.
What is the website? I'm sorry, because I came in late. I don't know which website.
I can link it for you right now if you want.
Oh, please do. Thank you.
I'm gonna get out of this presentation for now. So
I was like, I don't want to go through this whole thing and not say anything.
don't worry about it. So again, this is a CSS profile for college board. I'm gonna link it right now in our chat. And just as a visual, you guys could finally see what I was talking about. It says sign into the fall 2021 to spring 2022 profile. This is the one you're going to want to click. Do not click this one. This is for college freshmen.
Right now, college freshmen, huh?
Yeah, right now, college freshmen. We're high school seniors, so this is the one we're going to want to go through.
And
Oh,
that's
thank
a
you.
lot like the FAFSA in terms of having two available forms out there. You want to be sure you did the right one, as Jazz said.
What if I'm a current student right now?
No, yes, that's
You're a college student.
Yeah.
But you've already done the 2021, have you not?
FAFSA, yeah.
Well, or CSS Profile. Where do you currently attend, may I ask? Is this Anastasia?
Yes, this is her.
Where do you currently attend?
UEI College in Arizona.
Why are
here.
you doing the CSS Profile?
I was trying to figure out how to get into the grants and stuff because right now I'm in the high school program too. I'm taking with them, and I thought this would benefit on learning the process.
Oh, actually, but you don't have to do it for UEI. This CSS Profile, unlike the FAFSA, is only used by some schools, private schools out of state. And so if you're not planning to enroll either this year or next in a private institution out of state, you really don't need this form at all.
Well, I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Alrighty.
So you do need to do for, but if you're currently in high school program 2, your federal financial aid money would not be delivered to you, or you would not be eligible for it until you complete the high school program. But I don't want to waste your time with this because it won't do you any good unless you're planning on going to an out-of-state school either this year or next.
No, I'm not. I do appreciate that, though. I'd learned something.
All right. You're very welcome. You have a wonderful afternoon. You have some free time now.
All right. Enjoy. Everybody pay attention. Bye.
Thank you.
all right. So, Jennifer, are you still here with us? Are you at the academic section?
Yep.
All right. So we can move on. This is when it's going to ask you for your school year. This is where you're going to choose 12th grade because, again, we are high school seniors. So make sure to choose that for the 2020 to 21 year. Okay. That should be good. We're going to move on. And now we're going into current high school information. There's going to be a gray button that will open a smaller window. And this is the window that it's going to prompt open. You're going to put in your state, your school name, and then you're going to search it. When you do search for it, make sure to click the right option right before you click select school. So if it's not listed, you're going to put not listed. If you're homeschooled, that's what you're going to put. But if you do see your school pop up, just like I did my school, Bioscience High School, you're going to make sure that there's a blue dot on there. Then you're going to click select school and we can move on. So this is what it's going to look like once you actually do have your high school selected. So you're going to see it right there. It's going to ask you if you attended a private high school and if you attained any scholarships or grant for this school year. I'm not sure if you are in a private high school, but if you are, then fill out the information. But if not, then we could just move on because this information is not relevant. Are we good to move on?
I think so, Jazz.
All right. Now we're at the college selection, and this is where your list of codes will come handy if you move quickly to this section. This is the section that does take a while, and if it does take us a bit of a while, I'll just ask you guys to leave it for the ending part, and we could move on. So what you're gonna do is start by clicking your college and program selection, and then it's gonna prompt you this. Oh, yeah, okay. Okay, I'll talk about that. So when you click that, it's gonna be the same tab that opens up for your high school, but this time it's going to be for colleges. It's going to ask for a CSS code to determine whether that college is. If you guys look at the checklist, you'll see a link for that, and you'll be able to search up your colleges if they do require the CSS profile or not. And once you do adding colleges, you're going to see them pop up. The bad thing about the CSS profile is that you can't select multiple colleges at once, so you have to do it individually, one by one. That's why it takes a long time. I'm just going to wait 2 minutes for you guys to do this and add as many colleges as you can in that time frame. But again, feel free to move to do that once the session's over, so you can put in all the colleges you want.
And I believe it allows you to list 10, Jess.
I believe it does. And keep in mind that the more you put in, there's probably going to be like a fee, but don't worry, we're going to move you through that fee and make sure you don't pay.
And if you have not applied for admission to the colleges or don't intend to, then don't include them, because you don't want to do all of the work that the individual colleges might require of you in terms of submitting income documentation, etc., if you're not serious about them. So if you've applied for the college, particularly on the common application, you want to be sure that you also list it here. And of course, that you also listed it on your FAFSA. So any colleges that you're aware of right now that you have a serious interest in, otherwise you can always add colleges after you submit. But the more you do the first time around, the less work you will have later.
Mm-hmm.
This is a very time-consuming part.
This is, I remember it took me like 30 minutes just to keep looking at those colleges. All right, I think 2 minutes has passed. We're just gonna move on. Don't worry about it. You could always go back, and hopefully you guys at least put in one college so you know the steps to go through it. So now we're moving on to college details, and you're going to be asked information to the colleges you're looking to attend. The first thing it's going to ask you is what's going to be your 2021 to 2020 school year. So you're going to be a first-year undergraduate, and you never previously attended your college. So again, even if you do take college courses, again, you're still going to be a first-year undergraduate and never previously attended. And this will be for all your colleges that you'll be listing. It's going to ask you for a university ID, and if you don't have one, again, you guys won't have one, so you don't need to worry about that. Okay. Gonna move on, and then it's gonna ask you your housing plans. On this one, you're gonna choose on-campus living. Again, please make sure to choose on-campus living, especially since these are mostly out-of-state tuitions. I don't think any schools in Arizona require like the CSS profile, so these are going to be out-of-state tuitions. Click on campus, even if you do plan on living with like probably relatives in another state. Just click on campus to receive the biggest financial package you can. After you include your housing plan, it's going to ask you to apply to school regular decision, early action, or early decision. Some schools don't do early action, so you got to make sure if your school does that or not. Either you're going to choose regular decision or early decision. Remember, an early decision is binding, so that will be your college of choice if you do get admitted. And hopefully we can move on for that. Anyone who wants me to slow down, please let me know, but I will be moving on soon. All right. Now we're going into parent details. This is, we're going to get a little bit more in depth now. This is where you're going to need to know your parents' employment status and their plan for retirement. It's very important to know their plan for retirement. This is just one of the questions that the CSS profile asks and the FAFSA doesn't. This is where it gets more in depth. So move on. You're going to see the first one, parent one details. It's going to say, going to ask for their date of birth, their social security. Keep in mind that it's not required to put in their social security. So their parents do not need to be documented to have fill out the CSS profile. So do not worry about that. You're not going to need a phone number, but you will need an email address. For parents who don't have an email address, just put yours, but keep in mind that you are going to need to fill out some additional documents for that parent. So again, if you don't know their status, just know you don't need to put in that information if you don't know it, but if you do, the better. So long as it's not marked by a red star, then it's not required. Going to move on into our retirement plan. So that's like what you saw below right here. It's just a bigger screen for it. If your parents do have any retirement plan, make sure, like if you know of it, like, and you have asked your parents about it, check it off or no matter what they have. And if they don't have any retirement plans, then just make sure to insert 0. Do we have any questions at this page?
So far, there are no questions in the chat, or at least at this point.
All right.
Thank you, Chris.
Yep, no problem.
Right. And so now the next section, hopefully, if you guys are filling out parent too, just let me know if you need time, just so I could know. But are we good for now? Take it as a guess.
Yeah, it looks nothing in the chat, so it looks like we're good to move forward.
Okay. So now we're in the parent income section, and this is where you're going to need your parents' 2019 tax returns and their W-2. You don't need a W-2, but it will be helpful during this section. The first thing it's going to ask you is like, what is their status for their federal tax return? If they have it completed or not, if they're not required to file, or they just done it, put in what's done for it. As for the parent's tax return type, if you do have your parent's tax return, it's going to say in the top left corner what type of tax return it is. For my example, it was a 1040. And then it's going to ask you your parents' filing status. So if you have single parents, then it might be filing single. But if your parents are married, then you're going to put married, filing joint return. It will be also on the top left corner of your parents' tax return, so look out. And again, if you do need any like additional information, these little yellow boxes do tell you a bit more in-depth details.
Most students with two parents who are legally married, the filing status of the parents will be married filing jointly. There are rare cases where parents file two separate tax returns, married filing separately. If that is you, let us know. There are some additional things you have to know, like you have to add two tax returns together and that sort of thing. But if you have two parents who are married and living together currently, at a tax return, it likely says married filing jointly.
Okay, and I'll be moving on to parent income and benefit details. So, well, it actually expands now. So if you like considering like what you put on your parents' tax return information, it's going to open new drop-down menus. Right now, for me, it showed that like what schedules I have and forms that are included in my parents' 1040 tax return. So I would have to like either check out these boxes or not, and then move on. Depending on your tax return form, it's going to show up as another screen. So, and this is where it gets a little bit hectic.
Students often look at this and say, but I don't have any of those forms with my parents' tax return. Most of those schedules relate to specific circumstances that may not relate to your parents, like they own their own business or they operate their own business. The most popular of those schedules is Schedule 1. So you may have that attached to the tax return. If you do not see any of these, the likelihood is you don't have any of them for your parents. They did not file these.
And hopefully you guys are familiar with your parents' tax return, especially if you guys completed the FAFSA.
Right.
Probably already seen most of this, vocabulary. Now we're at the parents' tax return for your parents' income. You get to reference each line on your form. Note that only a few lines are required, so if there's no values, you could put it blank or leave a 0. I personally recommend just putting a 0 to know that you did go over that section, you read what they're requesting. So if you do look at your parents' tax reform, you're just going to see line by line. Just follow what it says and put in those values. Do you guys want time for this, or should I move on?
Again, there are many tax returns that don't have all of these line items. In fact, most do not have all of these line items. So if you look at line 6C, for instance, and it's blank, assume it's a 0.
Again, the only lines that are really required are wages and salaries, adjusted gross income, and federal taxes paid, and that's because that's what the CSS profile really wants to know. All right, I will move on.
I think that's fine, Jess.
Okay, now we have parent income in the next section. So this is still under parent income. This is where you're going to use the W-2 form, and it's going to show the amount of earned income. If you don't have the W-2 form available, you could use the form 1040 line 1, which is the wages and salary one, the wages, tips, and salary, or line 7B in some cases if you do have a Schedule 2 for your income. If not, they do have more additional, like on the yellow box, it does says if your parents are a U.S. tax filer, then you could also report Schedule K, but I haven't seen anyone with that, or Schedule 1, lines 3 and 6. Again, their parents' earned income is way different than their actual income, so keep that in mind and try not to put in their income rather than their earnings. And you'll see what an income is from the earnings. So if I move on to the next section and ask for actual parent income, and that's your parents' fixed salary, if they do have one, you can enter that amount. And this is where you're able to take a chance to elaborate on their change of income. So it's asked right here if your parents' income was significantly impacted due to COVID-19. If you click yes, it's going to ask you later on towards the end of the CSS profile. So their income from work would be the salary or totally earned that year. And also it is going to ask for both your parents if you have both parents. It might ask for both of your parents. So do we have any questions on any terms you guys might want clarification on? Like untaxed income and benefits, other taxable income? Right then.
Yep, still nothing in the chat so far, but I'll let you know if that changes.
All right, I'm gonna move on for that. So then we have child support. So if a parent pays for another child, and again, this is not going to be a household dependent. So if you have any younger siblings or anyone else living in your household, then they are not going to be listed for child support. But if they do pay for another child in another household, you're going to list that amount in that section. I would include a screenshot of it, but that's what we're working with.
This is the same question that's asked on the FAFSA. So it's accounting for money that your parents may have, one or both of your parents may have had to pay for a child living outside their household, your household.
Now we're moving on to housing information. This is going to just regard payments made towards housing, and I didn't include any additional information of these little small sections, so please complete this section on your own. It might ask mortgage information if your parents are owning the home, or your like monthly rent if your parents are renting. So if you guys see any, well, it's going to ask for your home address again, and then afterwards in that next section, it's going to ask for the dollars amount. And I'll give you guys a minute to complete that section, and then we'll move on. Right. So now it's going to ask for parents' assets. If your parents have any assets, you may take your time on this section. If not, then you're just going to get to this section really quickly. If they have any other real estate properties or any own a business or own a farm, you might have to list that down on the CSS profile. But if not, just continue to move through these sections, and that's about it. Right, so then the next section that you will see on the CSS profile is going to ask for your parents' expenses, and this section will regard any medical or dental expenses that are not covered by our insurance. So if you have insurance and your parents didn't had any medical or dental related expenses that were paid by the insurance, you're not going to list those. So again, these are exact files. So it's going to ask for exact values, but these exact values are not required unless the value exceeds 3% of your parent income. So if it's less than that, you don't need to put an exact value, but if it's more than that, then you will have to. And it's also going to regard any student loans that your parents paid in 2019 or 2020 and alimonies. Are we free to move on? And are you guys caught up, or should I wait a little bit? Do we need to go back on any sections?
Yeah, it seems from the chat that everybody is good to continue moving forward. But again, just a reminder, if you would like Jazz to pause or further explain something or go back a little bit, just type it in the chat or unmute yourself and we can go ahead and do that.
All right, I will be continuing. So now we have household information. In this section, asks if there's any dependents aside from yourself. So that might be siblings that are still living with you, or younger siblings. And the expenses of these dependents may be required depending on their circumstances. I'll give an example of what that means right here. This section right here is where your families will be listed. So either your parents that you included in yourself, and then it's going to ask for other people. So for my dependent, once I put in how many dependents were in my household, one was enrolled in college, and the CSS profile requested the following information. So it asked for institution and obviously the money my parents paid for and the amount of scholarships that they received. And this section isn't required, but if you do have this, like, you do have the extra like expenses that your parents paid for your dependent, then it might be useful to put it. But if you don't see that, and again, you may not, depending on circumstances, we could just move on.
They wouldn't see it, Jazz, if like all of their brothers and sisters or other dependents in the household were younger, like 10 or 11 years old. They would never see, I don't think, the dependent expenses for college, because I think it recognizes that they're not old enough.
Mm-hmm.
But if you do have brothers and sisters in college, it's very important that if you know the information, you fill out this part, because it can only help you.
All right. So then we'll be moving on to the next section. This is when it regards your information, and these questions are for you. So it's going to ask for your student income, and if it's not applicable, just put 0. I put 0 because I didn't have a job. So yeah, it's going to ask for your income. It's going to ask for interest income and taxable earnings. Again, if you don't know what these are, then don't write them down. And I would just put 0s for most of them. But if you did work, then you might have a W-2, and that's where you could put in your your earned money.
Yeah, that's possible that if you earn money, you didn't earn enough to have to file taxes, but you would just be putting in the money from your W-2 or your calculation of how much you earned. Often students don't have to do tax returns because they just have a part-time job that doesn't earn enough money to have to file.
And also note that the student non-filer, it's going to be included it's going to ask for verification later on about that, but we'll talk about that soon. So
oh yeah.
It's a process, but don't worry. So
it's a process, yes.
Gonna move on into the next sections. I know there's additional sections, but I didn't include this section, but it's gonna ask for expected earnings in while you're in college, so 2021 to 2022. You may not know that information, and again, it's not required. So these are just estimates. I wouldn't estimate too high for yourself because you are going to be a college student. So I listed 0. And since I am earning money from my internship, I also included that amount. But again, if you don't know your expected earnings for the 2021 to 2022 year, just don't put it. All right. So now, yeah. It's going to go back to asking to your tax returns. And again, if you had not worked, just click the last option where it says not filed and not requested to file a tax return. If you work, just choose the best option that describes you. Then it's going to ask for student assets. And if you own any assets or have any in your name, then you will have to report that. But if your parents don't have assets, then I'm assuming you might not have assets. So we can move to this section pretty quickly. And we're almost close to done, but not really, because depending on how many colleges you listed, and you may not see all these questions if you haven't finished putting in all your colleges, but your colleges will request information, and you got to make sure to read through them carefully. So, for example, you can see that the college I listed, which is Northwestern University, requested the model of my parents' cars and of their vehicle, the year, the make, the model. It's a lot of specific information, and again, make sure to read through them carefully just to make sure you don't miss anything or put in misinformation. Again, they're not required, but it's definitely an incentive to fill them out, because these are the colleges asking. It's not the CSS profile no longer. It's your actual colleges that you've listed. Depending on how many colleges is listed, you might see 1 or 2 pages of the supplemental questions.
Oh, that's fun. And the reason that these questions are being asked is not just to intrude upon your privacy, but because these colleges are trying to decide how to distribute their institutional dollars. And they want to make sure that they're not distributing that precious money that they've been given by their alumni and other organizations. I always laugh and say they want to make sure that they're not giving the money to Bill Gates. And that's why they ask this information. So it may seem intrusive, but they're trying to decide who has the most need. And you want that to be you. So while you want to be honest, you want to make sure that you're also accurate and you're not over or underestimating anything. And a lot of this is estimates. Like, what's the value of your car? Well, I don't know. But I would just pick a reasonable figure. I know my cars are worth more than $1,000, but it's worth less than 20,000. So I would pick the appropriate number in there. They are not going to ask you to document things you have to estimate.
Yeah, especially because it does ask weird questions. Like right down here, you can see that your parents have any interest in assets of another person's name or like relatives, and it even asks for like if you're planning to inherit anything from your relatives. Again, if you don't know, just make a guesstimate or put 0.
Well, that would be me, 0.
Since we're finishing up, again, if you didn't put all your colleges, just make sure to go back through that. But if you did put all of them and you managed to do that, you're gonna see them, all of them listed, and it's gonna include your fees. Now, if you have a low enough income, then it'll just automatically waiver your fee. But if not, then you might need to, if you do see that there's an amount due right here, then you're gonna be you're gonna want to ask your counselor for an SAT fee waiver. And when you do receive it, you could either register to take the exam if you want to, or like go through the steps of registering it, or you could contact College Board, which is, I put their phone number right there, and you'll tell them of your situation that you have an SAT fee waiver. They'll ask for that code and your name that you're using for your College Board account, and then they'll give you a code to use as free waiver for the CSS profile.
And this part is a little convoluted, I think. You understand it better than I do, Jasmine, but basically doesn't mean you have to take the SAT. But because the SAT is a service of the College Board, they use the SAT fee waiver to dictate the CSS profile fee waiver. So you can either register as if you were taking the SAT test, even if you don't intend to, or as Jess said, you can call this number and give them your fee waiver that you receive from your high school counselor, and they will assign you the code. Did I say all that right, Jen?
Yes, you did.
Okay.
So yeah, the College Board does prefer if you do call them rather than taking the steps to register to take the exam, just so you can move it. It's a lot faster, in my opinion, because I don't know how to register to the SAT, so I rather have called them.
Good. And they do answer their phones.
They do.
Right?
Yes, they do.
Okay.
They're super friendly, so don't be afraid to talk to them.
I have a lot of students who say, I tried to call the FAFSA hotline, or I tried to call the college, and I tried to do this, and nobody's there, especially during a pandemic. But I'm glad that this was successful for you, Jazz, because you can refer it to others. No need to register for the SAT. If you're not going to take it, you might as well make the phone call.
Yeah, and if you do have trouble explaining to your counselor why you're requesting the SAT fee waiver, just say you want it for your fee waiver for your CSS profile. They would probably know what you're talking about. So, if you're not ready to submit, that is fine, but I am going to talk about the steps after submitting, because even after you're done submitting, you're not done with the CSS profile.
Oh, no.
There are going to be a few additional steps to actually going through verification and getting the complete profile to your college, and that's going to be through iDocs. So the schools that you have listed will request documents and want a completed verification statement. So when you finish it, it's going to show that you submitted, and then it's going to show your college and programs. Notice how you can put college and program on there, so don't worry about that if you haven't put them all in. You can still do that. And then it's going to show right here next steps. And that's where it says submit documents to the Institutional Documentation Service, which is iDoc. You're going to want to click right here, what says click here to access your iDocs, and I'm going to show you how that looks like when you do click. So when you do click, it's going to show you the institutions that you have, and then it's going to show you their deadlines. Again, my earliest deadline was for Bates College, so that's what it's telling me. Alert, your earliest deadline is 11/15. First thing you might want to complete is your verification statement. It's going to be like a whole entire new document. It's going to look similar to a CSS profile, steps, and it's just going to verify if you have any other dependent students or dependents in your household, and also confirm your household information. Then it's going to ask for your federal tax return. So again, all my institutions are asking for this federal tax return, so you will have to do it too. Some schools might have a few more personalized, required documents, and others. Oh, and if you did put your non-tax filer, this is the thing it's going to get you. It's going to ask for your additional income. If you did work, then it's going to ask for like what was your income, even though you weren't required to file taxes for it. It's just going to ask that. So you could collect and upload your documents continuously, and I'll show you how to upload documents. No, wait, back on that other page. When you want to upload documents, go to like show like upload documents. They don't want you to take pictures of them. They really prefer that you scan those documents and make sure it's like written electronically rather than in paper. You will see that how it looks like, but I'm not going to include in this presentation. But the last slide, which we're almost done, guys, it's going to show if you submitted forms, it's going to show like what your processed documents look like. So again, like there's my W-2 submitted by my father and then form 099 substitute. We didn't have that. Again, if you don't have these forms that it's asking you for, you could always include a substitute and it'll accept that. When I did process it, notice how it took a day for my institutions to receive it. So I submitted on 10/16 and they received it on 10/17. So really do allow like a couple days or a day for these institutions to receive it. And I think you'll be good. Other than that, that's the end of this presentation. But if you guys do have any questions or want to go back to our previous slides, let me know.
It looks like still nothing in the chat. Jennifer, it looks like you're still on. Is there anything that you would like Jazz or Diana to clarify or cover again, or maybe go into more depth? Any questions or anything?
I just wanted to ask if this is only if you're planning to go out of state, or is it also in state?
It is for out of institutions. So I'm
Only?
sorry you had to stay here the whole entire time, but yeah, so any the in-state institutions here in Arizona do not require a CSS profile, but if you do plan to attend out of state, some of those private institutions will require it.
Okay.
So
Or Jennifer, you do your FAFSA for your in-state universities, or in whether they be public or private, because every institution that you would be considering in Arizona would require the FAFSA.
Yeah, so Jennifer mentioned that you plan to go on ASU. ASU does not require the CSS profile, so you're good. And
okay. Thank you. I'll leave now then.
all right, then have a great day. Thank you for attending.